So I'd like to welcome everybody to the Engage Track 2 webinar, Engaging Patients and Families to Prevent Patient Falls. Just to make sure that we are all on the same page about what this webinar is about, Track 2 is where we are providing advanced learning and exchange opportunities for those systems and hospitals that want to go deeper into their patient-family engagement, specifically around patient safety. And today is the fourth of the deep dive webinars that center on harm areas that can affect people in the hospital. Today we're focusing on patient falls. In the past, some of you may have been with us when we focused on family engagement around readmissions, medication error, and infections. And then a number of topics are still coming up after this one. Just logistical information about the webinar today. We are recording it for future reference. Please make sure to have your lines unmuted. Don't put us on hold. If you need to mute by dialing, you can mute by dialing 4* and then again 4* to unmute. So we count on everybody to unmute and unmute themselves. And we'd love you to use the chat function now, if you could, to just let us know who is in the room with you. If there's one person from a group of people that's logged in and showing up under participants and there are other names that we should note as being in attendance today, we'd love to have that be in the chat. And here, let me just go over the full schedule for Track 2. You can identify today's date and see where we are in the process. I wanted to also remind you that there are coaching calls opportunity with Karen and Mary, and there are some time slots that are still available on June 23rd and August 4th. And here's the phone number to call ASMA to schedule that. You can schedule your own time slot for one-on-one coaching on implementing some of the tools and concepts that we are learning in the Track 2 of Engage. A reminder that each of our webinars focuses on specific safety topic that is aligned with our CalHEN or HEN 2.0 objectives. And some of you may have been attending CalHEN workshops and webinars on the topic of patient falls that we have put out, and so you may be familiar with our faculty for those opportunities. That's Dr. Pat Quigley. And I'm very pleased that today we have Pat in attendance at our webinar, which will provide the synergy among these various offerings that we have on patient falls. And here's Pat's brief bio. It's a storied bio, but suffice it to say that she's one of the foremost national experts on preventing falls for those of you who may not know about her. Pat will help with the role play later on in the webinar and just generally be at hand to enrich our conversation on family engagement on the topic of falls. And our objectives today are to obtain know-how to construct practical tools for patient engagement and family engagement, especially in preventing falls, review simple tools aimed at preventing falls, and learn communication strategies that can empower the families and that can help them activate in using those tools. And we have some fun role plays planned out for you on that one. This webinar has been approved for continuing education credits, and if you are claiming a credit, you're seeking credit for the webinar, the way to do this is at the end there will be a link to an eval survey. Make sure you fill in the survey and especially provide your name and contact information and then what type of credit you're seeking. So that's all through eval. And don't hesitate to jump in. We're a small enough group. We'd love to hear your sharing thoughts and questions. And that's why we're having everybody unmuted as kind of a default setting for our webinars. And here's our principal folks who are with you every month and with whom you are already familiar with, and Karen Curtis and Dr. Mary Foley as our principal faculty members for Track 2, and then a number of our friendly faces from HQI as well. And With that, I know that Karen has lined up one of our hospital members to do a bit of sharing today about the work that relates to our Track 2. You will all remember that last time we had Scott Shum from Cottage Health who shared about their work on Patient Discharge Folder, which is a tool to empower patients and families to help with successful transition out of a hospital. Well, today we have Barton Health, who is willing to share. Barton Health, and they are long friends of HQI. We have been quite impressed with their Patient Family Advisory Council. They've started on the journey of patient-family engagement some time ago, and I think today their Director of Quality Management, Christina Farrell, is ready to tell you a little bit about some things they're doing in family engagement, and particularly a new idea of an information kiosk for patients and families, which was sparked, I think, by Engage Track 2 participation. So with that, I'm wondering if, Christine, can we turn it over to you?
Yes, I'm ready. Can you hear me?
Yes, and I'll advance. You have 2 slides, so just let me know when to advance.
Okay, so our hospital is Barton Memorial Health, and we're up in South Lake Tahoe. We were recognized by the Joint Commission. The Leapfrog study just came out, so we did receive an A grade for our hospital safety score. We have 63 beds and care for about 2,500 patients a year. We formed our Patient and Family Advisory Council in February of 2014, and we really felt the need for it because we have a very small community and old memories tend to die hard. So if someone had a bad experience back in 2000, that tends to remain out there in the community, and they don't really get a good understanding of all the work we have done in the last 16 years to make our quality and safety so much used to be. So we felt like it was important to engage our community, to improve our communication, and to gain their cooperation in all of our patient safety and quality improvement efforts, and also to promote respectful partnerships with community members. And we really needed their input on developing our programs and policies relevant to their needs and the family's needs. So they have tackled a lot of big projects. First and foremost was the discharge process, which across the board, all of them said was broken, and we had to agree. It takes about 4 hours. It used to take about 4 hours to get a patient out after the discharge order was written. They have also helped us look at our MyChart implementation. That's the electronic health record access through Epic that they have, and how does that look? What do they want to see on that? How do they want to receive notices? They also helped us develop our welcome packets, which give a lot of information to them as far as their hospitalization and what to expect, along with we've just recently added information to those packets on how do we engage them as team members and partners to keep our patients safe while they're in the hospital. So engaging them in the safety initiatives like falls prevention is so important, and also prevention of infections while they're in the hospital. And after the kickoff, like you said, Boris, at the Engage Track 2 kickoff that we attended, we were really impressed with the resources that Partner Health had to offer. And the story that Karen told at that kickoff, how so oftentimes families and loved ones feel like there's nothing they can do to help, and they feel so frustrated that they want to help their family. So how do we engage them and make them feel like they're doing something to help protect their loved ones and help them get better? So we were very inspired. We contacted Karen for some samples of the materials that she had provided, and really feel like we all are so busy. Why should we build something from the ground up? Why reinvent the wheel while there was something out there that was already so professional and so colorful and really engaging at a very good level for the patients? So we took all of the tools that we had seen, and we also brought back the presentation to discuss what we had learned at the kickoff. And the Patient and Family Advisory Council was very excited about having a project that could have such an impact and really feel like it was important work for them to do. So they really liked specifically the Daily Care Notepad. They thought that that would be extremely helpful. They liked the Discharge Trifold, which is the Care at Home partner. They really thought the medication planner was very clear and helpful. And then information on how do you prevent infections in the hospital. So we're also going to add something like a hospital map, hours for the main entrance, coupons in our cafe and for coffee, and then a local dining and hotel directory. And what the recommendation was from our council was that if we could set up a good kiosk of resources that we could help direct people to that was located in an area that we have for our families so that they are free to pick up the resources, look them over. We also wanted it to be an interactive kiosk where it shows like a welcome video with more information that could be helpful to them, and include all the storage of materials so that that's a handy thing for them to do. So our goal for this project is to launch this in August. So we're very excited about it. And that's it.
That sounds fantastic. Christine, this is we're going to be excited if you manage to stick to your timeline. It will be lovely to get an update from you at our capstone event. You may have a sense for how it's going and be able to share even more. But this is wonderful sharing and a great idea.
Thank you.
And with that, Karen, can I kick it off to you?
Sure. Thank you, Christine, for bringing forward, all of the great actions. And I love the fact that you're collaborating with a PFAC. It's I think it's just sort of the best use of that terrific resource. And I'm excited to come out, I think, July 7th, where I'm going to, Barton really had some very specific requirements for the kiosk, so we redesigned ours to give them the kind of storage that they needed. And so I'm going to use their time with their PFAC to get feedback on our new kiosk design. So it's great. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful process. So yes, I can get started. Boris, can you advance the slide for me? Boris? Boris?
Yeah, I'm here. I did. You're on your first slide. Can you see it?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So today we are going to focus, as he mentioned before, on preventing falls by basically being very transparent with patients and families about the fact that everyone in the hospital is at risk for a fall. That person who came in directly for a knee replacement after having, been bowling for, the last day and a half or whatever was normally very active, even that person is at risk for a fall. Everybody is in an unfamiliar environment. They're taking medications, probably many new for the first time, and they are simply not themselves. So it doesn't matter how athletic or how with it they are cognitively, a fall is a risk for everyone. So could we go on? We talked about this our last webinar, but one of the things that Mary and Boris and I are very interested is in staying in tune with all of you. We've had several of these webinars, and even though we're talking about falls today, we were wondering if in anticipation of this, a particular webinar, or based on any of the other webinars that we've had so far on family engagement, have you all sparked new ideas for bringing families into heading off these safety concerns that everyone has? And so this is your opportunity right now to share what you've done as a result of our Engage process. Anybody who out there would like to share? Christine was brave enough to step up. Are others out there? Can you tell us anything that's happened as a result of your engaged participation?
This is Kim from San Antonio.
Hello.
Hello. I'm the volunteer manager, and while we haven't done anything kind of official, I've discussed with our volunteers who are patient satisfaction volunteers, they talk to patients, that if they do notice anything where the family member is saying something like, that's not how they normally are, that they need to go directly to the nurse. And we've had 2 situations where that has really helped, and both patients ended up in ICU almost immediately, just because the volunteer asked the family member, you know, well, how do you think it's going, and that kind of stuff. So I was very proud of them.
I think that's brilliant. Good for you.
Thank you.
Good for them.
Absolutely. It's kind of scary to approach nurses sometimes as volunteers, so I was proud of them.
Yes, and I hope it was a good modeling for the family members as well. It taught them in that moment that their observations are important, and the fact that they took them to the nurses, now maybe the next time they will feel more comfortable stepping up, and they'll know how to speak up as a result themselves.
Yeah, it was interesting that it was a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter, and it was actually the daughter who had mentioned it to the volunteer. The mother mentioned it to the daughter, but the mother didn't want to say anything to anybody, and the grandmother was the patient. So it was actually the daughter who was like, no, we need to take care of it when she was speaking to the volunteer. So it was kind of 3 generations there that we hit.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Others? That's a great example.
So the challenge may be for the system to figure out how do you create an environment in which it is just as unthreatening to approach a nurse or a doctor as it is to approach a volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
This is Ted. Quickly, I can do some sharing about work that we've done in the VA for engaging patients and families.
Great.
Oh, if that's okay, I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
You know, okay. Well, you know, there's this really great program out of the American Medical Association, the National Patient Safety Foundation. It's called Ask Me 3. And the Ask Me 3 is really grounded in helping to focus any conversations that we have with patients and families on the top 3 things that are most important. Help them know why it's important for them that we're having a conversation and what they need to do about it. So we actually took that Ask Me 3 and modified it for fall prevention, and using that as a framework to talk with patients about why they're at risk for falls as well as the family members. So it's not just talking about a score or a level of fall risk, but it's actually talking about what are their top 3 fall risk factors that we need to have a conversation about. And the only way you can come up with that is if you've actually done an assessment. It doesn't mean you've done a scoring, a screening scale, got a score or a level of fall risk. You have to have an assessment to say, you know, postural hypertension or centrally acting medications or impaired balance. So you talk about the 3 fall risk factors that, you know, we want to make sure everybody knows about, why it's important for them to know about these fall risk factors and how it can their knowledge and their acting on them and being a partner with us can help keep them safe, and why it's important to them because there are risk factors that can increase their falls while they're in our care. So those are the 3 things that we really built around the Ask Me 3 and having a conversation with patients. But, you know, they have to be able to tell us those things back. So we actually integrate that with the Teach Back. And the Teach Back is a way of making sure that we really have taught so well that they understand and that they can show us back. So I just want to do a little sharing about that because that's one way of being able to have a sit-down conversation with patients as well as family members about why people are at risk for falls in hospitals and make it unique and individualized to every single patient, because that's where we really want to go, is to individualized care planning.
Mm-hmm. That's a wonderful example of modifying two very good programs to really fit a specific situation in a very practical and actionable way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So why don't we go on to the next slide? And I just, as you know, I like to pick out visuals that really plant the idea in your mind. This is a horrifying thing that we never want to see. So let's go on. And just a little background about why we are focusing on falls and why partnering with patients. And the main thing is that we are not limiting this conversation to frail elderly women. All ages, both sexes, all mobility and cognition levels, everyone's at risk for a fall. The most important thing to remember is that of those who fall, about half will suffer injury, requiring up to almost 13 more days in the hospital, a greatly increased risk for care in a skilled nursing facility, and a significant 61% increase in patient care costs. But the hidden costs are just as harmful or more harmful. They're the ones that we don't see. They're the ones that fall to the family and compromise the quality of life for the person who takes a fall. Confidence is impaired. Just wondering, that person who is a confident mover through the world all of a sudden realizes their vulnerability, which can be as emotionally harmful as physically harmful. The results of a fall often put an additional burden on families, not only for emotional support, but also for physical support. People are disabled by falls sometimes. So there are just numerous reasons to prevent that. But of course, as we know, it does fall to that person who makes a decision to move, even after, you can talk to them, as Pat says, about why there are risks, and we can talk to them about our concerns. But ultimately, it's up to the individual to make that decision. And where Mary and I are coming from is that sometimes that decision maker, that patient, needs some additional support from the people that are closest to them, the people who speak up to them and for them, and even sometimes about them, to help them prevent that decision or mitigate that decision to move on their own. So here's the next slide. As Pat was talking about earlier, that one way to do that is to share the facts with patients and families. This goes back to our Safe and Sound Partnering rubric. And to motivate with a sense of partnership. In this case, perhaps a good story about a fall, someone who took a fall, someone who felt confident, who felt reasonably certain they could get to the bathroom and back without falling, had a fall and suffered a consequence. Stories can be very powerful and can often be very relatable. So at that connection at the heart level, the motivation level, a story would help. And then, of course, providing simple tools especially to the family members who can help the patient, and the family member becomes, instead of that person who's sitting bedside, not knowing exactly what to do, can be very helpful. So we will go through all of these things together in just a second, some potential solutions. In this case, we have a role play we thought would illustrate this very well. this sweet little old lady is the patient, and she is very headstrong. She does not like it when her daughter expresses concern or in any way intimates that she is not fully capable. So her daughter knows that her mother is more frail than she really thinks she is, and the nurse who is there at the bedside, who's going to be Mary Foley, is going to explain to both of them, but especially enlist the daughter in a conversation to fully explain how they can partner together to make sure that no mishaps occur. So Mary, do you want to take it away, or? Mary? Mary?
I think Mary is muted. Mary, you may need to unmute yourself.
Is it working?
There you go.
Oh, okay, great. I did too many stars. Okay. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Mary, and Mary Foley, and I'm the registered nurse who's going to help admit you to our medical unit today. Karen, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I understand this is your daughter, Kim. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Oh, good. Well, welcome, both of you. I'll have to remember the Ks. So I don't know if I understand that this is your first visit to this unit in our facility, so I'd like to get to know both of you a lot better and really help explain to you what your stay the next day or so will be. But I really just want to know more about the two of you. And Karen, I want to ask you how you're feeling today. Are I know you're probably a little nervous being in the hospital, but basically, how are you feeling today?
I'm fine.
Good, good. Well, that's chipper. I like that. I'm fine. You sound like a really strong person, and I think that's wonderful.
I am.
Kat, how are you feeling today?
Well, I'm really worried about my mom. I know she says that she's fine, but, Mom, remember, I worry about you being safe.
Yeah, well, that's a good daughter there, Karen, that, Kim is by your side and ready to be part of your care team. And we're all going to do this together. But, Karen, I want to talk to you first and just really try to understand a little bit when you're up and about and getting around in your apartment. How do you feel? Are you feeling strong? Do you use a walker? Do you have any trouble getting around from the chair to the couch or to the bed? What's it like when you...
No.
No?
I'm fine.
Good. Well, good.
No.
Too. Well,
No.
she
doesn't need to be worried about me. I'm strong. I'm fine.
Well, that's great.
I live on my own, and I'm fine.
Well, I'm proud of you for that. That's really wonderful. But, your daughter loves you, and that's why she's expressing this care about you. So let's talk a little bit more. Now, first of all, it is so easy for any of us to fall. I just want you to know I fell 2 weeks ago, tripped over an extension cord at a meeting, and it was the silliest thing, and I was just lucky to not get hurt. Kim, have you fallen recently? Have you ever taken a tumble?
Well, I know in my house I certainly have. I tripped over a rug last week. But, I am still worried. I know my mom says she's fine, but Mom, it is a little bit dangerous at your house, isn't it?
Well, that's
No.
the question, Kim. Now, Karen, you probably don't think it's dangerous, but Kim just mentioned something really interesting, that she tripped over a rug in her own house, and I tripped over an extension cord. So that might be an opportunity for you, when you go home together, to just take a look around and understand what might be a potential for you to fall. As good as you feel and as strong as you feel, accidents do happen. And sometimes when we get up, we're a little dizzy. Are you ever dizzy when you get up, Karen?
Not too much.
Okay, well, maybe sometimes. So that's a possible situation. We'll take a look at that. We're going to have physical therapy come work with you and, really give you some really good strengthening exercises and really help evaluate
where you might have some safety issues. And because we don't want you to fall. It's something we think we can prevent as much as possible. It's not saying you're not well or strong. It's just saying, let's be safe. Kim's going to go home and fix her rug, and I'm going to fix my extension cord at that meeting, and we can look at your house and take a look at what might cause you to fall when you go home. Does that sound like a decent plan, Kim, that you and Karen could work on together?
Oh, definitely. I'd really like that. Mom, wouldn't you like that?
Well, if you do it.
Well, great. That's great. Well, that gives Kim something to do while you're doing some of your exercises, or, you know, when she's readying your apartment for you to go back home, because I know it's important that you're there by yourself. So that wraps up our opportunity today. We could go on and on and on and on. And
yeah.
I wanted to demonstrate, this is Mary Foley speaking, and thank you for indulging our amateur theatrics. We wanted to demonstrate, as Karen and I use, the care partner is critical, but it's really the person we care for, the patient in that bed. Karen had to have primary focus from me. We wanted to show respect for her and to engage them in a way so that they kind of got past this battle over, I'm fine, no you're not, I'm fine, no you're not. As it turns out, they were able to engage a little differently in a conversation that it took a little time. I have to admit, as a nurse, I might say, well, it would have been faster if I just wrote a 5 down on the scale, right, Pat? I mean, you know, we're always in a rush to do the scoring, but that would have been meaningless. In other words, you know, she lives alone.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we elicited more information. Karen, I think, lost a little of her defensiveness. And I honestly did fall over an extension cord at a meeting a few weeks ago, and it was quite silly and a little embarrassing. But that's how fast and easy it is for any of us to take a spill. And it's important for us to kind of level the conversation. Kim, how did you feel?
I think it was nice to be able to feel empowered, so I could, even though if in a relationship like this, if I normally would feel that I need to defer to my mother's wishes and concerns, and she would be embarrassed for me to say that, no, you're really not as safe as you are. I thought it was really nice to have you as the nurse take us full circle to come up with a solution that helps me to be empowered to be able to make my mother's home a little safer and have her feel empowered to be the one saying, yes, if you're the one doing it. I thought that was nice.
Yeah. No, it takes some time. And a little creativity, but it's that conversation with everyone there that gets us further. And there was certainly less resistance at the end. So anyway, thanks. Thanks, Boris, for letting us do that. That was fun.
Thank you.
Yes. So going on to the next slide. Oh, dear. We lost some of the content on this slide, some of the visuals. Okay.
Uh-oh.
We were
Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. This group can use their imaginations. What this item is on the left is a checklist. And I will make sure that you get this. It's also in your book. The e-guide that we supplied to you at the very beginning, there's a section on falls, and you'll be able to see this in that book. You can just look it up in the table of contents or flip through it if you'd like. So on the left is a checklist, and you see it's divided into 3 parts. The first part on the far left, which is in dark blue, is what all of the risk factors are for a fall in very simple terms. Things like low blood pressure and oxygen saturation levels that aren't exactly right. It's just sort of the recent surgery and people who are taking medications. And then who's at risk in the bottom in the green square. Basically, I think it's a simple sentence that says everyone's at risk in the hospital. Unfamiliar environment, if for no other reason. And I thought it was very interesting. I read that hotels have a big problem with people falling. You don't really think about it, But people, we are prone to getting up in the middle of the night oftentimes, and falls happen frequently in hotels, and it is a very big concern for that industry. So it's pretty common, I guess we're trying to say. On the lighter blue section is a checklist of things that the family member can do to help their loved one understand where the hazards may be, including pointing out, look, Mom, look, Dad, see all of these things that are on wheels in this room? If you get up, you can't really count on your IV pole supporting you because it's on wheels and it could slip away from you. And the same thing is true with all of the tables in the room. Everything is on wheels for a reason, but it's not really to support you. You need someone else to help you. You need a three-pronged cane, even, well-fitting shoes. So then we go on to the other items. Another tool is this yellow one. It's actually a hang tag. So on the slide that I'll be sending you, it will show a hole cut out in the middle. And that's just something that you can stick on the grab rail in the bathroom, for example, on the doorknob, on the bed rail. It's a simple reminder, not only to the patient and the family members, but to all visitors. It basically says, if you have a visitor who is very well-intentioned and might want to say, hey, let's go down to the cafeteria together and or go out to the sunroom and talk, they may not realize that just the act of trying to transfer their loved one or walk with their loved one, that person or their friend or neighbor, whoever they're visiting, that they're vulnerable to falling. So on the far right is a little sign that says, fall risk, and it's something that a family member can use just to tack up also on the bed rail or on the mirror in the bathroom. Again, it's just to keep that concern top of mind. Actually, in the new slide, we took out the red socks with the non-skid soles. If they're not well-fitting, those can be an additional hazard and probably shouldn't be thought of as a primary safety tool. I learned that from Pat just recently. Right, Pat?
Yes, and non-skid socks shouldn't be on everybody. You don't want to put non-skid socks on patients with a shuffling gait or Parkinson's, or a foot drop, because you increase their trip hazard. Mm-hmm. So even though there's strategies, doesn't mean it applies to all people. That's still the individualizing of care. Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, no, I thought that was
I apologize for interrupting. Asma is going to upload the presentation again just so that we can get that lost content. So hopefully that will work. I apologize.
That's okay.
No worries. No worries.
Matt does that, so she's doing a little upload. Karen, I think in the following slides, some of these items are detailed as well. So even though it didn't display great on that overall slide, you'll have a chance to show them and speak to them a little bit.
Okay. Thank you for reminding me of that.
And I also think it's important while this is loading to share, Karen, too, because, we're talking about a patient population that's cognitively alert or has mild impairment, but it's very different when you're dealing with people who are cognitively impaired because our first responsibility is to keep them safe, keep them safe, keep them safe. But certainly with people who are cognitively alert, we can really partner with them and make sure that they're as an informed decision maker as they can be.
Yeah, I think that's really such an important part of the work that you do, Patty, and why I tried to deliberately talk about the fact that in so much of the other conditions, hospital-acquired conditions that we've covered so far, we're assuming that, for example, preventing infections, that your first line of discussion doesn't necessarily have to be with a patient because preventing infection, there are only limited number of things that the patient can actually do while they're recovering. But in the case of falls, it's clearly a decision and a responsibility and up to that patient. Short of physically restraining someone, which no one wants to do, they have free will. And so it's just important, and I think the role play did bring this out so beautifully, that, we're respectful of that free will. The daughter is in a tough place for that reason. So the information needs to be equally shared, and the caution and the needs to be equally shared to support good decisions, as you say, Pat.
Yeah.
So, okay.
In California, this is Mary. I just want to reiterate the obvious for our hospital partners. We work with an extremely ethnically diverse patient population, and there are times that there are languages that there's just no readily available translator. And so the more visuals you have, and I think your fall deck and some of those other things, Karen, you can communicate quite well, with images and let people know. It's like using faces for the pain scale. Not everyone has to be, conversant in English. So it's a challenge, and we want to give culturally appropriate care and be safe. So anyway, I like the visuals a lot. That's the other part of the kit, which gives you a variety of materials and options and ways to use them. So let's go. Why don't we move on to the next slide?
Okay,
Karen,
we should move on to the next slide, yes. Okay, so one of the things that may help in engaging family members to be on your team and to be on board to speak up and safeguard their loved ones from falling is to actually sort of draw on the Livestrong experience of creating unity and a sense of being on the team by designating that special role of care partner with, actually happens to be a latex-free wristband. And this one is printed with Care Partner, You Mean the World, which is, we use the word care partner instead of advocate, which we've talked about a number of times. But it basically just is a special way to identify, actually, too, for the staff, that family member who has been, informed about the risks and who you feel comfortable really understands the importance of being on your team to prevent falls, because you've filled them in with a checklist or with a conversation like the one that Mary had with the mother and daughter. So, okay, the next slide, please. Okay, this is the checklist, which talks about, you can just have, actually, conversations do take time, and we understand that. So having a handy checklist that you can share with patients' family members, this all really kind of spells it out in about a 2-minute read. So you might be able to just share simple information. And again, it's about falling, and then who's at risk, and then what to do. So the next slide, please. All in the 6th grade literacy level or below. I think this one is actually more like at 4th grade. And then here's the hang tag that I really like, because you can just put it everywhere. It's got a little abbreviated checklist about how to prevent a fall. And then this one happens to have a tear-off coupon to present to the staff for a 3-prong cane. And the purpose of that really is just a way to get patients and staff to talk about falling. And also, of course, that tool is important. If someone senses that their loved one is really shaky, that is a handy way to get, the staff alerted. The little coupon with apples, that's simply one of those grace notes that we like to put into every tool, and it's a coupon to use for a little treat or a piece of fruit in the cafeteria. It's the hospital's way of thanking the care partners for being on the team with them. And then I really didn't like this headline, Prevent a Fall, so I just kind of thought of some other catchier ways that we could put this. Please call, don't fall for us. If in doubt, sit it out. And then the last one's kind of silly. Be kind to your behind, call, don't fall. These are more arresting ways than to say prevent a fall, but it's entirely up to you how you want to, reach out to patients and families. It's very simple. A piece of paper like that costs about, nothing practically. And it sends some powerful messages. Okay, and then the next one is, again, I call it a deck of cards to play up alertness. And probably the best way to do it is to find different images to put on these because, as Pat said earlier, that if you see the same image over and over again, it just becomes like wallpaper and melts into the background. So that's another reason to have like hang tags with different headlines on them. And in this case, it's very easy to put different warning signs on these things, and then on the back you can put those command stickies, so they just peel off the wall or peel off any surface when the patient, is discharged. But this is, again, these are just simple tools to actually put in the hands of family members to help them feel, to actually activate them, to get them on, to keep this fall concern and proactive prevention top of mind and also very actionable. So that's, can we go to the next slide, please? I think the next one we have another role play. So despite all of this, despite all of the education and the tools and the actually even the thank you note for helping, a fall can happen. And so in this case, we're going to talk about when that happens, how to conduct a post-fall huddle, completing the circle with the patient and the family member engaged as well. So Pat and Mary and Kim and Boris are going to take that over. Boris is the patient who had been walking with his daughter in the hall that morning, and he was feeling so good that he didn't want to go back to bed, so he was sitting up in his chair watching television, and his daughter decided, well, you know what, this is a good time for me to run down to the cafeteria and get a cup of coffee. Well, while he was waiting, he decided he was really more tired than he thought he was going to be. So he thought, well, I'm just going to get back into bed. I don't want to call the nurses and be a bother, and I'm too tired really to wait for my daughter to get back, so I'll just hop into bed by myself. But he underestimated his strength, and he was feeling a little woozy too from the medications that he had been taking. He just started a new one that morning, and sometimes he is hypoglycemic. So whatever caused it, he didn't make it to bed. He fell and hit his head, and that's where his daughter found him, and she got the nurse. So that's where we start, with Boris falling.
So I'm the patient, Karen, you're my daughter, Mary is a nurse, and Pat is the nurse who leads a traditional post-fall huddle, which she's an expert with. So Pat, do you want to take it away?
Sure. So what the daughter has just called for help. She went ahead and pushed the light, and we came on in. This is Pat Quigley's voice that you're hearing. And I'm going to be responding. I'm like, oh my goodness, Mr. Boris, I'm so sorry to see you. I understand from your daughter that you have hit your head. So I'm just going to do a quick assessment. I'm going to ask you, Mr. Boris, are you having any pain?
A little bit in my hip, but I kind of had pain even before, so it's hard to tell.
So I'm just going to feel the back of your head and see if I feel a bump already, and you can tell me as I palpate the back of your head if you're having any pain in this area. How's this feeling? Are we okay here? Did you hit your head hard?
Yeah, no worries.
Are you okay?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I'm just pushing the light, and we're going to have a couple more people come on in, because part of what we do in terms of this process is to complete a post-fall huddle. Now, colleagues on the phone right now, what we're just going to simulate is that Boris is okay. So we're going to have 3 other people come on in, 2 or 3 other people who can respond to coming in for the post-fall huddle. And as they come on into the post-fall huddle, what we're going to do is to work together to still help Mr. Boris get up to a sitting position so we can have a little bit of a conversation. Now, mind you,
Nurse, I feel really stupid about all this. That we have to have all this.
But
a little embarrassing.
Share with everyone. If you weren't really hitting your head hard, we would not be doing a post-fall huddle. When anybody presents in an urgent or emergent state, we're not going to do a post-fall huddle. So we're all assuming that Mr. Boris is okay, and we're going to go ahead and conduct the huddle.
Okay.
So we have some other nurses who have come on in, Mr. Boris, and this is a process that we do because we want to work together with you and your daughter here to understand what was different this time that you were in the bed that you fell. Because, you know, you've been walking around and you've been getting up and you're post-op and you haven't fallen before. So what do you think was different this time? Can you explain that to us?
Pat, this is Mary, and I'd like to make sure, having been Mr. Boris's nurse for the last couple of days, and I know Karen is here, and she's the one who put the call light on when she found her dad on the floor. I think she should be in the room as well, and we should include her in this conversation and not
absolutely
hall, because you know she's worried about will Dad be ready to go home, and like you said, this is the first time he's fallen, but he's a day away from discharge, and you know it's a concern that something may not be as safe as he thought, or maybe it was just a matter of a sudden accident or something that we could help prevent happening in the future. You know, he does have a history, because I've been taking care of him. Sometimes he has a little hypoglycemia, and, you know, I'm not sure how well how good lunch was this time, and if he was able to eat all of it. And sometimes his blood pressure's been a little, it drops a little. So that's why we've always said have someone with you when walking and have someone with you right now from getting up from a chair. So, you know, could we have Karen come in and have that conversation together?
Oh, absolutely. We're all part of this huddle.
Good.
Thank you. I appreciate it because you are right. I am worried and I feel guilty. I just stepped out for a quick cup of coffee and I thought he was going to be okay. And I'm really feeling so guilty about this right now and worried, of course.
Well, first of all,
I was fine. I can't figure out what happened. I became a little tired and I said the bed is right here. I mean, the bed is like a few feet away from the chair, so I just thought I could move over, and for some reason, I don't know, I felt weak in my knees or something, and next thing you know, I'm down. But I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Well, actually, I'm glad you're feeling confident, Mr. Boris, but don't forget, you just had surgery, so things are a little different. You had anesthesia, you've had some pain medicine, you know, your blood pressure, your blood sugar, all of that is still, you know, getting back to your normal. So you're not quite who you were the day you walked into the hospital. You have a better hip now, but we want to talk to you about some of these, you know, potential for you to fall when you go home, and really how to avoid it so that Karen isn't worried. Karen, please don't feel guilty. You did nothing wrong. You had a great walk in the hall. You deserved a cup of coffee. This happens, but what we're trying to do is prevent this from happening again.
And that's exactly right. And that's why, Mr. Boris, what we're trying to figure out is what do you think was different this time? Because you may have had weakness before and your blood pressure is dropping. Can you kind of think of if there was anything that was really different? You have lots of risk factors that can contribute to your fall risk that Mary's talked with you about and Karen's talked with you about, and we're all just trying and figure it out this time, because as Mary was saying, we just don't want you to fall again because of the same reason, and we all want you to be safe, not just here, but after you leave us.
So, Boris, I think that helps just kind of play it out a little bit. What I love about Pat's work is that she really has been working with clinicians to do the post-fall huddle, and as well involving the patient and family in that huddle, and that's not the norm in many cases. I think it should be. We wanted to role model it. Sorry, I have my phone ringing in the background. So anyway, I'm pleased that we had a chance to do another role play, but we're down to our last 5 minutes.
That's right. We got really into it, and we could have kept going. Pat, any parting words on your end? Anything that you think we need?
What I'd like to say is on the VA website for the National Fall Toolkit, we have resources for the post-fall huddle to help nurses work through that, because oftentimes when nurses are dealing with the post-fall huddle, we identify fall risk factors, so it doesn't really get to the root cause. And the post-fall huddle is really designed to help us get to the root cause so we can trend reasons why people are falling in our care and help them to not continue to fall for those reasons. But, trend that and then use that for strategic planning to improve our practices or our program. So thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your team and partnering with patients and families. And by the way, I would just like to take one more minute to say that, in dealing with people who are cognitively alert, part of what we talk about with them in all of the engagement and the TFEC is what happens if they choose not to call for help. Because oftentimes when you're talking with patients, you only talk to them about some choices, not all choices. And there's all this business about calling for help. Rarely do people actually have a conversation honestly with just transparently about what happens if you happen to choose not to call for help and you have an accident, and that accident is a fall. And what could happen to you? So what we teach is 3 things. If they were to choose not to call for help, because that's their choice, they have a right to make a choice, to call for help or not. If they choose not to call for help and they have an accident, that accident is a fall. The 3 things that we teach is they could get injured, their length of stay could be increased, and they can't go home when they want to. And then they have to teach us that back. And when we do that, then we really have made sure that we've maximized autonomy with the self-determination. And I've done a lot of sharing about that, especially with 2015 being the year of ethics for the American Nurses Association and updating the ANA Code of Ethics for nurses. So I just think it's really important for all of us to be really, really open to making sure we have open discussions with patients and families about all choices, not just some choices. So again, thank you so much.
So
That's
ideally,
an
we would have ended with a teach back as well.
Right.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. I know we are at 1 o'clock here. This next slide I'm going to just leave people to use as they would like. We often have it posted. It's a sort of a SWOT analysis of your strengths, your challenges, your opportunities, and possible concrete next steps that you can make in tightening up your communication with families around falls. And so keep that in mind as a tool. And with that, I want to remind everybody to fill out the evaluation, and you can click at the link that you see on your screen at the top, SurveyMonkey, to remind you about the individual coaching calls. We'd be very happy to have you schedule them, and here's information about how. Our next webinar is on Thursday, July 21st on partnering to prevent surgical complications. So look forward to announcements and registration about that. And with that, Karen, I'm going to hand it over to you for the parting thoughts.
Oh, thank you, Boris. We're really short on time. I just want to thank everybody for being part of this work. And I know sometimes it's hard to speak up in a group. And if there's ever any time that you want to reach out to us, either for a coaching call or even if you just want to call me at the office or drop me a note, I would be very, very happy if you just want to bat around ideas. We've had a lot of these webinars, things I hope thoughts are percolating. If you're having, ideas or challenges, just we want to help. We really, really, really want to help. So reach out to us, Boris, Mary, me. But I can only speak for myself. I would just love to hear from you and help in any way that I can.
And we're going to want somebody to present with us in the next webinar, so one of our hospital partners. So think of joining us at the beginning, as Christine did from Barton today, because that was excellent. It's great to hear from you what you're doing, because you're really the role models.
Yeah, right.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys so much. And before we sign off, I want to thank all of you who attended for taking the time out of your busy schedule and joining us. And I especially like to thank Mary and Karen and Pat for sharing their knowledge and experience, and also Kim for sharing your considerable acting talent. Thanks again, everybody, for attending, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.